with me. And Jean and I have a cool backstory. We've been friends for a really long time, like 20 years or some really long time.
Yeah.
And we've our spiritual journeys have just always been kind of, traveling along with each other. And she's a fantastic practitioner. So Jean is a transformational coach. She's a yoga teacher and a family constellations facilitator. And I'm super pleased to have her in the conversation with us today. And we've got a nice practical conversation coming up about how do we really handle the emotional stuff? How do we handle the the for real emotions that we're having? And I don't know, about you guys, and Jean, I think you and I are a little on the same page here, but for me, I've been my feelings are all over the place. I feel like really awash in the sea of the energy of the world. I have my own feelings. I'm picking up feelings from other people. And I can feel super emotionally overwhelmed. And then I get to the point where I have to shut all that down and go watch Netflix or do some really mind-numbing thing because I just actually can't take it anymore. And I don't know, do you think that's where a lot of us are right now?
Yes, I do. I can absolutely relate to all of that. That's exactly how I'm feeling. Like, I feel pretty good in the mornings, and especially if I actually get dressed like I did today. It changed everything for me in terms of how I felt, about myself, like feeling energized. And by about 3-4 o'clock, I feel myself tanking. Like there's like a wave of fatigue that comes over me, and all I want to do is climb into bed. And I typically am not doing that, even though that would be great to do that. But if I can get myself motivated and get going on dinner, I can get my second wave. But then after dinner, I'm like, okay, it's Netflix time. Which I never really used to spend a lot of time, but now I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta finish Stranger Things. I am in for 3 hours on the Netflix.
Stranger Things would be great. I'm sort of involved in the train wreck of the Tiger King, which I'm pretty sure it's only invented as like the level of train wreck we need to see to actually get out of the feeling what we're feeling in this moment. It's hard to imagine anything that could actually pull us out of the horror of coronavirus, but that might be it.
Oh my God, it's so true. It's insane. It's insane. So yeah, so here we are. We've got a lot to deal with, and we've got our coping mechanisms, not all of which are the healthiest. And it's finding what that balance is. What's going to be the healthy way to cope through this?
I think most people kind of suck at managing their emotions. Like it's not a skill that we learn. Nobody's taught. We don't get a class, like we should get, it should be taught as sort of basic life management skills, like probably in like junior high school, like how do we managing your feelings 101, and we all learn a lot of really bad habits about how to do that. And I don't know, what do you think we could do instead? Like, how do we really grab this by the horns and sort of take ownership of our feelings and come into an empowered like response with our emotions?
Right. I think it's really easy to just skip over the emotions and not dwell on them and just power through and get done what we need to get done. I think for a lot of us, that's been our default for many, many years or most of our lives. And I think what's happening right now, one of the many things is that's being called forth in us is the ability to identify how we're feeling. And it's forcing us to really evaluate what is going on for us internally as we see all that's unfolding within our own families and our communities and beyond. And what are those feelings? Can we just name them? Do we even have the vocabulary to name what we're feeling? Some of these feelings we may never have even acknowledged before, ever.
Right.
So I think it's just first naming being able to name what's going on. What are we feeling? That's number one. And number two, can we allow ourselves to actually feel the feeling? Because there's where it gets a little dicey, where so many of us just, don't even allow ourselves to go there. We just keep plowing forward and won't sit with the emotion. It's too scary.
Or on the other side of the spectrum, there are people that are more like me where we flood. Like you might be kind of a repressor. I'm a flooder,
Yes.
Or I have like repress, flood, And the flooding is like the emotional overwhelm and feeling of being an empath, being so overwhelmed, like that I can't actually process any more feelings. I just like, I'm like so inundated with my feelings and my clients' feelings and the feelings of the world. And like, it's really worse for me if I turn on the news or I watch, I was watching my Facebook feed today, and I had a moment where like, it's like every other thing I was reading was like, my husband died, my boss at work died, I'm sick, I think I'm gonna die, and my father died. Like, and I was like, oh my God, this shit just got real in such a powerful way when this is going on. And then you're seeing the numbers everywhere like that. And I actually had a moment where I'm like, I don't think I can deal with this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can actually like, I just like, it popped a circuit in me. And I just had to get up and walk around. I had to go for a walk. I had to like do some deep breathing. I was like, and I had to sort of pull all the tools that I know how to do and to just even get my head or my heart around the enormity of what's happening right now. And I don't know, I just think that's happening. What do you think? Is that something that you're hearing from other people?
Yeah, for, I think for many, it's so much overwhelmed that we have to shut it down on some level. And I think what's really interesting to think about is how, when you mentioned, well, there's those who repress, like me, or those who feel it all and express it all, and that just within the microcosm of our families, become aware of how each one of us in the family unit are going to react to various things that are happening in a different way. And some of us are going to be completely shut down, and others of us are going to be really emoting or whatever. And how important it is, I think now more than ever, to communicate with our friends and family members, those who are close with us, in order to actually name what's going on and say, hey, I'm having this feeling, or I'm noticing you're having a reaction. Do you want to talk about it? Mm-hmm. Like, really encouraging the people we love, especially if we're in a place of where we know how to talk about our feelings, being the ones to instigate the conversations about feelings. I think that's something that a lot of healers and those in the energy medicine and just people who are the kind of the strong person in the family are being called to do. Yeah. I'm seeing that in my family. I'm asking all my family members to tell me, how are you feeling mentally, emotionally, and physical today? Like, mm-hmm. Just check in. Tell me how's it going for you?
That's great. And I just thank you for being that person for me too. Like, it's really, because if I'm not talking to you, it's my cats. And they're good listeners, but sometimes they walk out of the room in the middle of a sentence, right? So what do we do when we don't have people at home, Jean? Like,
right. And it's finding who is that friend that you can rely on, who can be the one to hold space for you. And not all friends can do that. I mean, just let's be honest, not all friends can just sit and hold space and honor the emotions that you're going through. And if you really don't have a friend, then now's the time to find a therapist. If it's ever been on your list before, now is the time to actually move forward and find a therapist that you can talk with, that you can trust. Find a coach. Find somebody who's in a position of strength, meaning they have the wherewithal to support you, to hold sacred space for you to have your emotions. I think it's so critical right now.
Totally. Because we've never been in this situation. This is like this, break the mold. We've never been here before. We're totally in new territory, and no one really knows how to deal with this. But the therapists and healers and people like that, almost all of them are doing remote sessions right now, and all of them are wanting to help and find a way to contribute and give back. So I think it's a fantastic idea. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this concept of the shadow and this idea of spiritual bypass. And that's something that you're really, really trained in, doing shadow work with people. And I'm also super interested in this topic. And let's talk about that a little bit, because I think it's important.
It is really important. And I think now it's really coming up for a lot of people. So our deepest, darkest fears are coming up, and some of them are becoming very real for a lot of people, survival stuff. So we're working out of the back side of our brain, right? Our fight or flight mechanism is absolutely activated in most of us. And we find, I think what's common is that we, up to this point, we don't want to think about the darker emotions. We don't want to think about grief, anger, rage, jealousy, shame, guilt, any of the darker emotions. We tend to just kind of shove down and not deal with it. But these emotions are being triggered right now more than ever, and they're coming up for a reason. They're coming up because the time is now to begin to look at these parts of us that we haven't been willing to look at because it seems too scary, or we don't want to even admit that we have these feelings. But the only way that I believe that we can really heal is to move through these dark sides of us, that are real, and getting real with ourselves first about when we have these shadow emotions or these shadow feelings that we don't want to admit, naming them and shining the light on them rather than running away from them, which is not going to help our healing journey at all. It's not going to move us forward. And up to this point, maybe we've been able to run away, but now it's not quite probably so easy to do that.
So this is my theory about it. I call it the jelly donut theory of shadow work. And the jelly donut theory is that we all have this soft and squishy inside in the middle of us, right? We squeeze that jelly donut, we put pressure on it, the jelly squirts out somewhere, right? And what the squirting out happens when we are denying, repressing, not acknowledging, let anger, fear, whatever we're having, and we have a big judgment usually about that, then we go under pressure and it squirts out sideways, and then we have problems. We have anger comes out and we have road rage, or we have like fights with the people in our life, or we get all hatey and judgy on Facebook and like shame and hate other people, and those are all what's really inside of us that we're not dealing with, that now we're then projecting out into the world, kind of spewing it out, and it's sort of this emotional pollution, if you will. And that's really, I think, what you're talking about, right? Is we need to be mindful. If we own it, then, and we process it and we look at it, then we don't maybe unconsciously act it out and project it all around us.
Right, because it is so damaging when we do this unconsciously, and when it comes out sideways and we're taking it out on others. It's so destructive, right? And I think really the work that I do in family constellation work, it's part of one way, and there are many ways to work with your shadow and to work on the darker sides of ourselves and allowing them to be seen and released. But one way is to look at for us right now. My question would be, what is being triggered in you right now that might be connected in your ancestry? What maybe have happened to your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents that is now being reawakened in you? So when you think about any one of us, we're a product of famine, of Holocaust, some sort of genocide, war, slavery. We're all affected on one of these levels in our ancestry at some, whether it's grandparents, great parents, whatever. And since epigenetically they're showing that this is carried down, these traumas are carried down in our DNA, so we're carrying that with us. And I believe we're all just in freak out mode for the obvious reasons that we're completely justified to be freaking out. But there's this other level of memory, of ancestral memory that's being brought to the surface of our cells remembering not having enough food, not having enough money, not having shelter, being forced to move, relocate. All these things, they're primal. They go back really deep. And I think in the work that I do, there's a lot of value in shining the light on what happened before us in our family, and allowing ourselves the opportunity to really dig a little bit deeper, so we can shine the light on it and give it an opportunity to be released from the system, to like honor what happened, honor the traumas that our ancestors went through, and then be able to say, okay, that was their experience, I'm having my experience, but I'm ready to let go of the wounding that came down the line, came to me. It's no longer.
And what I was saying was that I've done a family constellation with Jean, and I found it extraordinarily powerful and deep to really see how the patterns that I had in my family were still in a very unconscious way playing out in my life, current life. And I'm wondering if we could sort of talk about how this idea of the shadow pertains to what we're experiencing right now. Like, we have a lot of intense feelings about fear, anxiety. Maybe we're looping back to how our parents would have dealt with that, and what the patterns are in our family generation about how things would have dealt with a crisis. How can we open this up? How can we open this up and really handle the emotions in a powerful way? Because what I notice for myself is when I deal with the really dark, gnarly, heavy stuff, it sort of frees me up to be back in the energy of hope, of optimism, of flow, and kind of doing what I need to do in a much more empowering way. And if I don't, I get stuck in the really dark, heavy feelings that I can't get out of.
Yeah. And I think there are lots of ways to do it. In family constellation work, you're given an opportunity to kind of travel back, if you will, back to your ancestors and what they were dealing with 1, 2, or more generations ago, and really tap in on a deep level to what they were feeling, what they were dealing with, what was the reality of the struggle or the trauma that they were in. So there's a level of compassion that you're able to access in the work that I do as you go to these places with your ancestors. And once you can have compassion for the struggle, the trauma that they went through, and for many of us, if our parents are passed on and we had a bad relationship with them, it's hard to imagine having any compassion. But when you do the family constellation work, you're able to look at it through a different lens than you normally are. And when you're able to have some compassion for the trauma in your family, something shifts. Yeah. Something shifts in your system. Yeah. That I don't really have the ability to explain it fully, because it's very mystical what happens. But it's very real for my clients after they go through a family constellation process in feeling much lighter. And it's like something's been lifted off of them, some sort of heavy weight that they've been carrying for a long time, that they've been holding for the whole system, for their whole family system. They've been holding some particular thing, and they're able to release it. And I think that's something that you said, that you walked away feeling like you were able to give up something.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an interesting kind of work, because it's very, I think, really working with your unconscious in a lot of ways, so I wasn't conscious of those patterns. I wasn't aware of them, even though I know a lot about my family history, and I wasn't conscious of how they were impacting me right now. And you're totally right, that feeling of compassion really freed me for feeling like compassion for the people that were wounded, and also the people that did the wounding. Like it healed, it sort of created an integration between those. And I was thinking, like, how in this time, like, that compassion seems to be the answer for me about how I deal with what's happening in the world right now. How I stay out of fear, I feel compassion. How I stop judging or hating people, I feel compassion. Like how I show up for my clients who are dealing with impossible situations, I feel compassion. I feel compassion for myself. That's my go-to strategy, really. And I just know that I have to handle all these emotional goo that I'm feeling so I can get to that compassionate place. Otherwise, I'm just like faking it. I'm just, and that's in a way like what the spiritual bypass is, right? Where we're like, I don't want to look at the fact that this is horrible. I don't want to look at the fact that people are dying, actually, a lot of them. I don't want to look at the turmoil in our economy and what the real actual crap that this is going on here. I'm just gonna pretend that that's happening. It's love and light, you know. It's sort of kind of an irritating new agey phenomenon. I mean, it's not just the new age, but this, you know, like I'm having my heart ripped out. Oh, love and light to you, you know, or
namaste.
You know, namaste. Like I'm actually dying in the hospital. Oh, gee, well, you'll feel better when that's done, you know. Like we all have to visit, you know.
It's real.
Yeah, it's real. It's like we and it's so hard. And I know for me, it's so hard to look into what's real. It's so hard to look into the pain and the real, authentic, you know, rawness of what people are experiencing right now. And if I'm not grounded and in coming from a place of compassion, I just want to like fluff it off and be like la 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 la, this isn't really happening. Love and light, you know. And I'm not saying that there isn't a real place where we can genuinely show up in a higher vibe and genuinely see the possibilities. But there's such a fine line in a way between that and the spiritual bypass, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that what you're talking about, compassion, I think that is such a critical piece in this, and that especially for those who are healers or in the healing field, who are holding space for others, that it becomes so much more difficult to hold space for others when you cannot feel compassion for yourself, and you cannot recognize your emotions, your fears, anxiety, the freak out, whatever, shame, guilt you're feeling. If you can't name those and allow those to move through you, you can't fully show up for another.
Right.
And that happens just within our families. You don't have to be a healer for that to be true. It's true for all of us, because we're all holding space for others on some level. But to be fully present with another person's pain, we have to be willing to hold the space for ourselves in that pain.
Right. Exactly. And that seems to me like that's the difference between really showing up in a compassionate way and just doing the bypass, you know, where you're just kind of, it's another way of avoiding or dodging the depth of what's actually going on. And I don't know. I'm in a way, it's like so difficult for me. I'm like not having a judgment right now about people who do that, because I get it completely. And I can feel inside myself like this really intense tendency to like want to look away, you know, to want to pretend that this isn't happening, to want to look at the bright side, or just like, you know, just ignore it.
We'll get through this.
You know, or
it's gonna get better. And nothing wrong with those thoughts and those expressions of positivity. But we have to be willing to look at the darkness in this as well. Yeah. We have to, because we're not going to get what we're supposed to get out of this whole insanity. Like, why are we even here? Are we willing to take responsibility for all the systems that are breaking down now? And how have we, on some level, contributed to the dying of our planet? And what are we being called forth now to do in these incredibly difficult times? How can we show up in a much more present, compassionate, authentic way that maybe is a little bit different and a little bit scarier than the way we have shown up in the past?
Certainly a call. And I think there's a calling towards that. I think it's part of the wake up. You know, if you really want to wake up, you got fully 100%, you got to do this deeper work, you know. And even in like the mystery school, and I'm really steeped in the mystery school tradition, and how that I teach in a mystery school, and I also have my own leanings that way. In the initial journey of the initiate is the inner looking, like the look out of the self and self-identity. And the second level is the journey to the underworld. And sort of all mythological stories all the hero's journey, the fool's journey, if you're a tarot card person, has that as a necessary part of our, of our opening, where you have to go to the underworld, you have to go to hell and come back with the treasure, and that's where we are. It's so interesting to me, and all of us, I think, have had our individual journeys to the underworld. Maybe it's illness or divorce or depression or traumas that we have that are sort of the initiating experiences that we have that are there to wake us up. And it's so interesting to me that this is sort of an entire, not just our culture, because we've had our Western culture with 9/11, we had that, but this is like the entire world. So it's all happening at once for the entire world. So the entire planet and all the people in it are a journey to the underground. Wow, journey into the underworld. And it's, I mean, dang,
dang is right.
Yeah. I don't know. And then what's incredible is that the initiation that's possible on the other side of that is true transformation, true alchemy. And then when we come out the other side, we will literally be in a new world. And I've been listening to like the new agey people talk about the ascension and the fifth dimension and like the new planet, new earth and all that stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This journey to the underworld and where we come on the other side is really going to be, I think, something that we can't at this point imagine. Really, we have an opportunity, especially if we stay woke. We have the opportunity to co-create that experience together for realsies, not like a fantasy, but for real as we decide what we're going to do next. So interesting when you look at it that way, don't you think?
It is. There's so many levels to this when you really look at it, and how complex the various components of the systems that are breaking down in the metaculture, as well as what's breaking down in the micro. What's happening within each one of us, if we allow ourselves to really look at what's going on within us as we deal with our emotions and deal with our reactivity to what's going on, and really see some of those primal fears coming up. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing for me is my, the inner child work that I've done is really coming in handy now. Like, yeah. This is my inner child is totally freaking out and needs some reassurance. Like the small version of me is really needing to know that everything's going to be okay. And I think I'm not alone, right? I mean, no. I'm the only one who's a little kid who's feeling a little kiddish about, I need someone to pat me on the head and say, honey, I've got this, you're okay.
It's so good. I love it. And when this started coming down the pike, so funny. The first thing I did was I bought I'm not kidding. This is my emergency plan. I bought myself a giant teddy bear. It's like this big. And it's like a size of a small child. And I seriously walk around my house holding this teddy bear going, I'm okay. We're going to be okay. I'm all right. I got you. See?
I have my Holly Hobby doll. It's really coming in handy. This is my favorite doll. I traveled, packed it in my suitcase. It went everywhere I went. So
I love it. And I have my big teddy bear it's like that big. And yeah, so I think that, and I love doing inner child work. In fact, I'm doing a new, I teach an inner child class that's pretty intense. I teach it twice a year, and it's coming up at the end of April. It's a 10-week program, and it's a real intense deep dive into inner child stuff. So, but I'm psyched. It seems very timely to be doing this work, and I know you have a super generous offer that you wanted to give. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I feel the family constellation work is really relevant now as ever. And I want to give people an opportunity to experience the work and to allow some healing to happen within their family system. So I want to offer 5 free hour-long family constellation sessions. These aren't a consult. Isn't just like, let's talk about whether we can work together. Like a real deal, 1 hour of constellation work where we look at your family system, we look at what you're struggling with, and we do a laser really dial in on one very specific part of your family system that there's something, something that needs to be looked at. And so I offer that for 5 people, and the first 5 people to respond on the Facebook chat can get those sessions. And I'm really happy to be able to offer those sessions so some people can experience it and maybe perhaps get some healing from it.
Super generous offer, Jean. And I can tell you, having worked with you myself, that it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, an incredibly powerful modality. I'm a huge fan of family constellations. I recommend it often and recommend you often. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's really powerful and important.
It is, absolutely. And as we wrap up here, like what's one thing people can do to really help them process their emotions right now?
Oh, well, it's hard to choose one. I have a whole list that I'm making. And share it. But the one thing I think, if you're a journaler, now is the time to journal. And that's a place where at least you can get all your ugliest emotions out and just dump it on the paper. Just like, the Artist Way morning pages, if you're a follower of that at any time, it's the first thing you do when you wake up, you dump all your emotions on the paper. That, I think, is a great thing. Of course, many other things that you can do. Just getting outside, taking time, just really, you said this with Maria on your call the other day. I love when you said, double down on your self-care practices. It is not it'd be nice if it's like a requirement every single day. You're thinking about, how am I going to take care of myself today?
Right. Good. Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I can see we got people on the Facebook feed right now who are like claiming your session. That's so good. You can sort out who gets what. But thank you so much, Jean, for having this conversation with me, and super important that we talk about this deep stuff, and because there's an opportunity in it, because it's presenting us with a chance to clear. I always say, like, better out than in.
Right.
What's coming up is always, and in my belief, like a gift. Like whatever triggers we have, whatever challenges we have a gift inside of them. If we have the skills and the tools and the support, and we know how to lean in there and release something that is coming up, we have more like a breakthrough and a freedom on the other side. And it's sort of what happened to me this weekend. Like, I went into a really, really, really dark place this weekend. It just was super, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this kind of level of badness. And I just did all my stuff. Like, I really sat with it, and I cried, and I journaled, and I meditated. When I couldn't take it anymore, I slept. And 2 days of it. And then when I came out of it, I like rocket launched into this week of just incredible things happening in my life.
Right.
And I felt like I unplugged something, cleared something out, and then really like went it back into the flow. So
I'm so glad you said that, because that's so important that everybody hear the message that when we stuff those emotions, that's how we stay stuck.
Yeah.
We just stay stuck, and it does not help us move forward. But if we actually let them come up, sit with the emotions, let them happen, then we can get to the other side of that.
Yeah.
And it feels very different.
Totally. And the other side of it is for me back in the flow. And so for Tammy, who's not sure who you are, it's Jean Papagni, my very good friend. So super happy to have, yeah, it's been so fantastic. So Jean, people can get you at it's jeanpapagni.com.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and yeah, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you.
I know. So fun. Thanks, honey. It was so good to see you, and I'm sure we'll be back again doing this soon.
Great.
Thanks,
Take care.
honey.
Bye.